So, but notice, he's pleasing God. Our lives are one that we should seek to please God in all things. We live as unto God. You know, God tries our hearts. He'll let us come into situations that will try us. You know, with the children of Israel, he did the same thing. He tried them. You know, the Satan may tempt us to destroy us. God tries us to perfect us. Because there are just certain things that there's no other way to get it out of us unless we are in a trial. You know, there's certain things, like a tea bag. A tea bag will just sit there. You can put it in cold water. You may get a little bit of color. But if you put a tea bag in steaming hot water, boy, it all comes out, doesn't it? Sometimes it takes a little bit of hot water to see what's in our lives. You know? I mean, there have been times I've been going along and thinking, man, I'm doing all right. You know what? I read my Bible this morning. I prayed. I think I'm all right. I'm really walking in the Spirit. And then I open the front door. Or like somebody said, then I get out of bed, right? I get out of bed and then I'm ready. But those things come along. Those little foxes that will spoil the vine come along. And they try to spoil us. You know, Satan is seeking us like a roaring lion, seeking whom he may devour. Right? He goes just seeking. He's looking for weak spots. He's looking, and he wants to kill, steal, and destroy from your life. That's what his desire in our lives is as the believers. He wants to deceive us. He wants us to get going down the wrong road. You know, if we're saved and we're out of his clutches, so to speak, he wants to deceive us so that we're not doing the right thing. And then he goes on a little farther. Let's see. In verse 10. He says, you are witnesses, and God also. Notice how he uses that, and God also. How holily, justly, unblameably we behaved ourselves among you that believe. Paul was living his life as though God was watching. Paul lived his life as though God knew it all. You know, all things are naked and open before him, before the eyes of him of whom we have to do. God sees it all. You know, that's why Paul says to the Galatians, be not deceived. God is not mocked. For whatsoever a man sows, that also shall he reap. If you think you can live a life of disobedience to God, and it's all going to be hunky-dory, well, you've got another thing coming. Right? Some men's sins go beforehand unto judgment. Others follow after. You might think you get away with it here, but we're all going to give an account to God. Now that's not meant to put fear in you, unless that's meant to put fear in you. Right? But Paul's not mincing words here. He's not saying, well, because of the grace of God, you're all accepted. And it's just a big lovey-dove fest. Do what you want to do, and then you can go over and slap that brother or sister across the face and then come give me a hug. It's okay, buddy. We know you've had problems as a child. Right? We know your mom dropped you in your head when you were 1. And that's why you suffer these things. We know you were mistreated when you were a teenager. Well, we've all experienced that, right? Some of you probably haven't even been dropped on your head. Jordan's raising his hand. That explains a lot. Michelle, did you drop him? Okay. He says, God is our witness. God sees us. And then he says, how holy, justly, unblameably we behaved ourselves among you that believe. Paul believed that as ministers we should behave. He spoke to Timothy, Timothy, if I tarry long, that you ought, I want to write these things and speak to you that you ought to know how to behave yourself in the house of God. which is the pillar and the ground of the truth. You know, we should behave in this house, right? We know that this is a building. But when we come together, we're coming together as God's people.
Amen.
You know? We need to behave in this house. We need to teach our children to behave in this house. I remember when Patrick was first born, and he was, well, not when he was first born. But you know, the time to start discipline with your children is a year before their first birthday, right? Okay. But when he was 1, started walking, and he getting all, you know, he's doing what 1-year-olds do. They try you. God not only tries your hearts, children will try your hearts and your patience. I remember going out like sometimes 4 or 5 times out of service, you know, and there were tears. He cried once in a while too. And then we came back in. Did it again, came back in. You know, to behave ourselves in the house of God is important, isn't it? Much of the New Testament is not just hard doctrine, you know, but a lot of it's just you behave. Don't walk disorderly. If a man doesn't eat, if a man doesn't work, he won't eat. You know, these are tough. These are some tough words from the Scriptures, right? So let's not just get on the road where we think the love of God just means anything goes and you can just do what you want to do. No, you know, when Paul speaks about liberty in the Lord, he's not speaking of liberty that you just cast off all restraints. What he's speaking of is now you're free. You're free from the bondage of sin. You no longer have to obey it. Now you're free to follow the Lord. Now you're free to walk with Jesus. Before you weren't. You know, before I became saved, I never sat around in my room after school, come home, go in my room and think, man, I'm a dirty, rotten sinner. You know, I didn't. Because I liked sin. There's this little cartoon where this little character says, but I like the cookie. He's telling him, you can't have the cookie. It's not good for you. But I like the cookie. But I like to sin. Sin is pleasurable for a season. But if anybody says that it's not, well, they haven't lived very long in their body. Right? But the wages of sin is death. It works death. Yeah, there are times I love to just tell people off. Tell them what I think. But be not deceived, God's not mocked. If I reap it, I'm going to sow it. It's just a natural, and that's a natural thing God has put into the universe. If you put down corn seeds, you're not going to get tomatoes. Right? 2 horses don't have a cow. 2 monkeys don't give birth to a whale. Right? Don't think. That's the evolution people have a tough time with that one. And then he says in verse 11, as you know how we exhorted, comforted, and charged every one of you as a father does his children. Beloved, we need all of those in our life. We need to be exhorted. Exhort with all long-suffering and doctrine, Paul told Timothy. 1 Timothy says, exhort them with all long-suffering and doctrine.